your boy Kachi coming to you live.
Alright guys, what's going on, man? And I'm going to be talking to you guys about something that was going on not too long ago. You could practically say like around an hour and a half ago. You know, this is obviously a game, me and Orlando and a couple other guys, we were just in this game, T4 Survival. And, you know, at some point along the way, you know, I was talking to a number of people and they were asking, you know, what is end game? You know, what does it mean? But we were talking about other stuff and whatnot. And a couple other people, they were describing their intake on what end game means to them as far as with Warframe is concerned. You know, some people said, you know, end game is like what you do in the raids, what you do in the sorties, and whatnot. You see enemies that are like 60, 80, or 100 and whatnot. So practically, in my mind, I'm like, okay, you know, that's how you describe endgame. You know, he thinks endgame was like that. That was one person said. So it brings up into my head now, what does endgame mean? Practically, endgame, pretty much you could take it as when you're going in the void. When you get to that certain point where your weapons don't kill as efficiently as it should. Because you gotta think of it like this when you go in the void. When you have your weapons modded up to the max, you put all the good stuff on it. You gotta take it as this. When you go in, you kill everything and whatnot. When you get to around the 60-minute mark, obviously that's an hour in T4 Survival, you're like, damn, these enemies are high level. They're strong as hell. My weapons ain't killing as it's supposed to. You go practically, you know, an hour and 10 minutes in, 20 minutes in. Practically, you could say, go in 2 hours in, your weapons ain't doing crap. Because no matter how good you mod your weapons, they will fall off at a certain point. So it's going to come down to your Warframe's abilities. Endgame is practically at that point where your weapons have completely fallen off. They can't do nothing else anymore. You practically reach the end point of your weapons, you know, effectiveness as far as with killing, as far as with, you know, doing a T4 Survival, T3, whatever it is. When you get to like an hour and 45 minutes in or 2 hours in, you see enemies that are like 150, 175, 200 level enemies and beyond. That is end game. When you get an hour in, you see those enemies start to scale in levels. They'll one-shot you. They'll rocket bombard you. They'll melee you to death like one shot, you're dead. That is endgame. When you think about it, that is endgame right there. And when you want to keep going further, it depends on your Warframe's abilities. What can they do? You know, if you're Ash, you could Blade Storm them. Obviously get the bleed procs, keep going in. You know, you do everything in your power to try and stay alive. You mix it up. You try to be creative. But at the end of the day, you know, you gotta go back to your weapon, see if you could try and mix and match and what you're trying to do. You can whip out your melee depending on whatever it is, and you just go in, just try and kill as much as you can. But in the end, you know, it's like, damn, how am I gonna kill these enemies? It makes you think on your feet when it comes to endgame. It makes you think like, alright, this weapon doesn't work, you know, alright, let me try this or this. It makes you think on your feet. What does it mean? What does it mean when it gets to endgame? Endgame is like after an hour, or you could practically say an hour and 30 minutes in, where your weapon starts falling off. Like the power isn't there. because the enemies start to scale. They get stronger and stronger while your weapons get weaker and weaker. So you could say it's practically a reverse scenario. So that's practically my definition of end game when it comes to Warframe, because people thinking going when you see enemies that are like level 100 and stuff, you know, that's practically it. That's the highest it could go to. Sorties, when you go up against those enemies, the highest they go to is 100. That's it. So practically when you get to sortie mission 3, you see a level 100 enemy, you could practically say that's the equivalent of a T4 survival 60 minutes in. So, I mean, it's funny when people say, you know, when you go into the void, you go an hour and 30 minutes or an hour and 45 minutes in. They say that's not endgame. Look at the enemies' levels. Look how hard they hit. They could one-shot you. Especially those nullifiers. They could one-shot you. So, you have to be mindful as to, you know, don't just stick to one thing when you just do sorties and you just do the raids and you think, oh, that's endgame. Anything else is not endgame. The void, well, obviously as of now on the PS4 or Xbox, where you go an hour, 2 hours in, that is endgame. Because in sorties, the level just stays at from, what, 60 to 100. That's it. The enemies, as high as they go, is just straight 100. That's it. So, sorties and the raids are not just, you know, once you get 100, that's it. Oh, that's endgame. When you see an enemy that's above 100, see 150, 200, 250. Endgame keeps going and going in survivals. Sorties, level 60. I mean, come on. The level 60 enemy is not endgame. You can still kill that level 60 enemy. You can still kill that level 80 enemy. You can still kill that level 100 enemy. When you go above 100 and your weapons don't kill as effective as it's supposed to, that's where endgame, you just reached it right there. And it forces you to think on your feet. So it's like, yo, you gotta think, how am I supposed to kill this guy when this weapon doesn't do the job? You gotta think. So that's practically what endgame is.